Welcome to Right versus Left News, your daily briefing on the stories that matter, told from both sides of the aisle. I'm your AI host, Chris, and each day I bring you the most important political and cultural news, with perspectives from conservative and progressive voices. No spin, no agenda, just the facts and the opinions that shape our national conversation. Let's dive in. It's Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. Two Supreme Court arguments, a high-stakes health fight, a new governor in New Jersey, and a ruling on access to ICE facilities. A lot to unpack today. Before we jump into today's stories, a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more, monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting Right vs. Left News. Now, let's get to the headlines. At the Supreme Court, Trump v. Cook, a showdown over the Federal Reserve's independence. Here's what happened. President Trump moved to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook over disputed mortgage allegations. Cook sued, and the court kept her in place while it hears the case. In an unusual move, Fed Chair Jerome Powell plans to attend oral arguments, a visible show of support as the justices pass what for cause removal really means under the Federal Reserve Act. Reporting from the Washington Post and the Associated Press say the stakes include whether a president could gain de facto control over monetary policy. Subpoenas, and even talk of a criminal probe into Powell, have raised tensions. Conservatives say the law clearly permits removal for cause, and that alleged dishonesty on mortgage forms, even if it predates the appointment, calls a regulator's judgment into question. They argue accountability doesn't end at confirmation, and warn that if presidents can't remove a governor for cause, the Fed becomes unanswerable to voters. Progressives warn this is an assault on central bank independence. In their view, for cause must be tied to misconduct in office, not uncharged pre-government allegations. They worry pressure campaigns could politicize interest rates, spook markets, and damage global credibility for independent agencies. Guns and private property in Hawaii, Woolford vs. Lopez. Here's the question. Can the state make privately owned, publicly accessible places, shops, hotels, restaurants, off limits to concealed carry unless the owner explicitly allows guns? The Ninth Circuit upheld Hawaii's default no-carry rule, and 4 other states have similar policies. Gun rights groups and many conservatives call this an end run around Bruin that guts the right to bear arms in daily life. They say the state can't presume a ban on private property that's open to the public. Owners can post no guns if they wish, but silence shouldn't equal prohibition. Gun safety advocates and progressive commentators counter that Hawaii's rule vindicates property rights and public safety. Nobody has a constitutional entitlement to bring a gun into someone else's store without permission, they argue. And with lower courts split under Bruin's history and tradition test, they hope the court will clarify whether consent-based limits fit that history. On public health, pediatric groups are suing over the new childhood vaccine schedule. Here's what changed. After HHS and the CDC sharply trimmed the list of vaccines recommended for all children, moving others to high-risk or shared clinical decision-making. The American Academy of Pediatrics and allies filed suit, saying the shift bypassed standard scientific process and endangers kids. The Washington Post reports the new policy drops universal recommendations for flu, rotavirus, meningococcal disease, hepatitis A, and more. HHS and the CDC say coverage remains insured and better aligned with peer nations, and that fewer routine shots could rebuild trust. Conservative outlets emphasize parental choice and alignment with other developed countries. They argue that fewer routine shots could improve trust and uptake, and that families still have access and insurance coverage if they want additional vaccines. Progressives and many public health voices call the overhaul risky in a severe flu season. They warn it will sow confusion, lower coverage, and invite outbreaks, and argue the administration sidelined the normal advisory process. We'll be right back with more of today's news after this brief message.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks again to our sponsors. Now back to the news. Mikie Sherrill is being sworn in today as New Jersey's 57th governor, only the second woman to hold the office. A former Navy helicopter pilot and four-term member of Congress, she campaigned on affordability, utility rate relief, and criticism of federal tariffs. Polls show residents want taxes front and center. Conservative voices cast Sherrill as a nationalized anti-Trump figure whose focus on Washington could distract from New Jersey's chronic tax and cost of living problems. They warn that blue state governance may mean higher spending and higher rates. Progressives celebrate a historic win and say her mandate is to deliver on affordability without rolling back labor or education gains from the Murphy years, positioning New Jersey as a Democratic model heading into the midterms. A federal judge has declined to block Homeland Security's revived rule on lawmaker access to ICE facilities. Here's where things stand. In early January, DHS reissued a policy requiring members of Congress to give 7 days' notice before visiting detention sites. Judge Gia Cobb said challengers used the wrong procedural vehicle to stop the new memo. So for now, the rule stands while litigation continues. Recent denied entries for Minnesota Democrats after a fatal ICE shooting and active negotiations over DHS funding have made oversight especially time-sensitive. Conservatives argue planned visits prevent security disruptions and political theater, and say the new memo complies with spending limits while maintaining order in facilities. Progressives call it an end run around court orders and appropriations law, warning that unannounced visits are essential to watchdog conditions. 2 Supreme Court showdowns on monetary policy and public carry, a high-stakes suit over childhood vaccines, a new governor in the Garden State, and a 7-day notice rule that remains in effect for now. We'll keep watching what changes next. That's it for today's episode of Right vs. Left News. Remember, understanding both sides isn't about picking a team, it's about being informed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join us tomorrow for another balanced look at the day's biggest stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.